Welcome into Valley Central Plus and valleycentral.com, your local election headquarters. It is election night here in the Valley, and we want to thank you for joining us. We have a great conversation for you tonight where we'll be going over constitutional amendments that every Texan will be voting on. And we're also going to be looking at local races from Edinburgh to Harlingen to Port Mansfield and everywhere in between. I want to bring in our first guest right now, lecturer in political science, Robert Velez, a frequent guest on our Inside Valley Politics show. We want to thank him for showing up tonight and talking politics with us. How are you doing this evening?
Well, Brian, thanks for inviting me.
Well, good. We are glad to have you. So first up, polls have just closed, so we don't have any updates on races just yet. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these constitutional amendments that voters were facing. And let's start off right at the top with Proposition 1. That's the constitutional amendment providing for the creation of the Permanent Technical Institution Fund for Texas State Technical College. And that one would set aside an endowment for the school system across the state, because they have a very limited capability for funding. What are you seeing with this one, Robert?
Well, as an educator myself, how could I be opposed to something like that, to provide for a permanent fund that would fund higher education? And I think it's important to identify that it's for the technical institution infrastructure. These are institutions that are different from like UTRGV or even some community colleges, in that they provide technical and vocational training, and a permanent endowment that could be relied upon as a source of funding is always something very important for education, particularly in the public sector. So I think this is a worthy effort on the part of the state of Texas. I think it's unfortunate that it's done in the form of a constitutional amendment. This should have been done, in the session. But hopefully, Texans will support this and provide a solid source of funding. Education is always important. I think it goes without saying that in the 21st century, a K through 12 and a high school diploma is just not enough to get into the workforce and to be able to create a living where you can afford to live, even in Texas, where the cost of living tends to be somewhat lower.
Right, and I mean, the Texas Constitution, the way it's set up, the way the state government's set up, is a lot of these things go through to the constitutional amendments that in a lot of other states might just be legislation that is passed in the House. But Texas has a very specific, strict rules about what can and cannot be done by the state government. And so that's why we see this year 17 constitutional amendments, not a record, but pretty close. And normally we do not get this number of constitutional amendments in an election year.
Especially an election year that we're expecting to be a relatively low turnout. There's no federal offices on the ballot. There are no state executive offices on the ballot. And in some municipalities, these are the only items on the ballot. So,
that's right.
And some people feel like it's a little too deep in the weeds to start picking apart these constitutional amendments and what the implications are. But they're very important, and every election is very important. Of course, I would say that as a political scientist. But even people who just believe in small d democracy view Election Day as important.
Right, and these constitutional amendments, these are this is the Constitution, the framework for how the state is run. And on this past weekend's episode of Inside Valley Politics, we had Cameron County Republican Chair Deborah Bell, and she said that she had looked through and had seen about 4% of eligible voters coming out and voting for these things. And like you say, that you speak to about participation, 4%. Determining what is in the Constitution, how the state actually runs, that can be a problem if you have that few people who are making those decisions for millions of other Texans.
And in elected offices, we have in many municipalities a runoff requirement. You have to get at least 50% in order to secure that elected office. And you wonder if we're modifying the state's foundational document, right? States' constitutions, U.S. Constitution. These are foundational documents, and they're considered that because they can't be or shouldn't be changed willy-nilly, because that could potentially lead to an unstable structure. But this is, since Texas only meets once every other year in the legislature, sometimes they have to rely on these constitutional amendments to get the business of the people of Texas, the second most populous state in the nation, done. In a given year.
That's right. And these things can also be very, very hyper local, like we see right here with the TSTC amendment. There aren't campuses all over the place. They don't have a huge population, but it is something that is not specifically laid out in the Constitution for them to do. And so that's why we have to amend that foundational document, as you say.
And playing a little devil's advocate here, like I said, as an educator, I would support any endowment, solid source of funding for higher education. Consider also that perhaps when you're talking about vocational and technical training, perhaps the business community should be investing in the funding for some of these educational institutions, since they will largely be the ones that benefit with a trained workforce. So, there is an argument to be made that should it only be on the shoulders of taxpayers in Texas, should it also be on business taxpayers as well?
Right, and that has been something that has come up. Like the internship programs have, there's been a I will say rejuvenation in the idea that you would have internship programs, especially for these kind of technical blue collar jobs that bring people on. And so 4-year college is not for everyone.
No, definitely.
And so and people want to do something else, do something a little bit different, and those we need to make space for that.
Sure. I tell my students all the time that if they don't want to be in a 4-year university, get a liberal arts degree or something that is going to lead them to a profession that, there's plenty of other opportunities, not just in Texas, but elsewhere, and jobs that probably make a lot more than I do. And maybe you do, Brian. I don't know. I know you're.
Well, I will say, I will say that I personally went to TSDC here in Harlingen. I was not a great student in high school, and so I needed some foundational courses, and some of those other courses I graduated from there, and I thought it was a great experience, and so a lot of those programs really help a lot of people.
Yeah, my first attempt at college didn't go all that well either, so I can relate.
Yeah, but look at us now.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's never too late. It's never too late.
We're going to move on to Proposition 4 now. That's a constitutional amendment to dedicate a portion of the revenue derived from state sales and use taxes to the Texas Water Fund. Now, this one, if there's something that everyone here, especially in the Valley, can get behind, it is anything to do with water, anything to do with helping our water situation.
Yeah, I mean, water infrastructure is critical to the Valley, and that's that's a tense issue. Especially with our neighbors to the south, to some extent, with water treaties and where we come. But interestingly enough, I think this is really fascinating. The League of Women Voters, which is a nonpartisan pro small d democracy group, actually went out on a limb on this Proposition 4 and provided an endorsement, a very unusual for a nonprofit like the League of Women Voters to actually endorse a proposition on the ballot. They don't endorse candidates. They generally don't take positions on partisan issues because they are small d pro-democracy, not partisan and not necessarily focused on public policy all that much. But this was important enough for them to put their seal of approval on, if you will. So for those that trust what the League of Women Voters did, this is an organization that's been around over 100 years, and they're trustworthy, they're reliable. And for them to put the weight of their influence, as little or as large as that might be here in Texas, I think is very meaningful in this particular ballot initiative.
Yeah, which is interesting. I actually hadn't heard that, but I mean, I remember like League of Women Voters, they always would put out those nonpartisan voter guides just to let you know who's on the ballot, and I don't recall them ever having endorsed or campaigned, as it were, against a candidate.
Yeah, it's very rare. They've made some overtures in the last few years, but again, it's in the service not of an ideology or a political leaning. It's in the service of small d democracy. And when I say that, I just want to clarify between democracy as an institution and the Democratic Party, which is the different things.
All right, now Proposition 4 would direct the state to put in $1 billion a year into this fund, and it would expire after 20 years. And now I know that some of the opposition to this is that it's simply not enough. The Texas Legislative Council estimates that there's actually comments made looking at documentation from the Texas Legislative Council, comments by supporters that they have compiled say that studies have suggested $154 billion will be needed over the next 50 years to fully address water infrastructure concerns. And no pun intended, this is kind of a drop in the bucket as far as how long we're going to need all that water infrastructure, and the mandate to put in that money expires after 20 years. Now, this might be something that after a while, if lawmakers see that it's going in a way that they like, maybe we are back here again in a few years and another constitutional amendment to amend this constitutional amendment to maybe give them a little further window out to keep going with it.
And water, as you mentioned earlier, water projects in the valley critical to success of the valley's growth in business. In housing, making sure that we have adequate water supplies is critical infrastructure. And one of the things that it's important to mention is that these infrastructure projects require maintenance. So it's one thing to put a chunk of money away and direct it towards a particular infrastructure project. We have to remember that part of the reason we pay taxes on a regular basis is that there are ongoing costs to our infrastructure, be it water, be it roads, things like that. So for taxpayers that are paying attention to this and saying, well, here we go again, it's another public infrastructure. I mean, this is just necessary in 21st century Texas in 2025.
Right. And moving forward, there's been a lot of talk about a lot of AI data centers moving into the state. The state has been very aggressive trying to bring those in, and those businesses require a lot of water, and so that's just another pressure point that voters might want to look at.
Yeah. In addition to the water, I mean, they're drawing a lot of power as well, and to some, there's some linkage between some of the increased power costs and the increased proliferation of these data centers, as you mentioned. So, I mean, I know that's not on the ballot, data centers, but water is one of those resources that they need too.
Right, and going forward, there's never going to be a time, especially in South Texas here, where water is not top of mind for a lot of people, even if it's AI data centers, if it's just agriculture. Sure. Like you said, that 1944 water treaty with Mexico, that has been a real thorn in the side of a lot of people down here.
Yeah.
All right, now let's move on over here to Proposition 13. Now, this is the constitutional amendment to increase the amount of exemption of residents' homesteads from taxation by a school district from $100,000 to $140,000. And this is, I will say, one of the many tax cutting and tax savings amendments that are on the ballot this year.
I mean, if you're a property owner and you benefit from this, then it would be difficult to make an argument against it. I think the big challenge we need to think, though, is long-term. Tax exemptions, waivers, things like this, where it says, okay, we're going to increase the exemption. That does, in the long term, reduce the revenue that the state collects. And that could potentially, again, this is forecasting here, okay, but it potentially could impact other tax. So basically shifting the tax burden rather than just you're lowering it for one group of property owners, but not lowering it for another. And you could argue there's some inequities there, but good luck finding a taxpayer in Texas who doesn't like a tax reduction. Despite the fact that the state has no personal income tax, there are plenty of other fees and tax. And if they call it a fee, remember, it's a tax. They call it a fee because they don't want to call it a tax, but it's the same thing. It's the government collecting money through some form of transaction with its citizens or property owners in this case, and limiting revenue collection lowers the reserves available for public goods, things like schools and roads and other infrastructure.
And as this was being debated, that was one of the key points that opponents brought up, was that if we're going to, if we the royal we. If we're going to keep paying for things that we want to pay for, or legislatures have decided that we want to pay for, it does shift that burden. Is the state then going to have to come in and shore up some of those, especially school districts who only get money from those property taxes? And is that going to be something? I know we've talked about this, that the Texas economy relatively good shape, but what if there's a downturn? What if there are issues that legislatures in the future need to address when you've given an exemption like this? That has been the opponent view.
Well, and I think that's a key point, Brian, is that in a market-based economy like we have, some people will look at indicators in the economy, go, it looks like a recession's coming. A recession is always coming. These occur in our market-based systems. There are boom and bust cycles. And limiting the ability of a state or any municipality from getting the revenue that they need in order to keep the goods and the public goods and the services that taxpayers demand requires their ability to raise revenue when there's a downturn like that. So this could potentially, result in municipalities and maybe even the state losing some of the ability to raise that money when it's needed during a downturn. And there's always a downturn coming. The trick is, when is it going to happen? And that's where lots of people try to read the tea leaves, but economic indicators being what they are, and as you mentioned, the economy in Texas is doing pretty good. So, but can't hit a home run every time.
Right.
So,
all right, let's move now to Proposition 17, something that is pretty relevant here in the Valley. This is the constitutional amendment allowing the legislature to provide an exemption for taxation of the market value of real property located in a county that borders Mexico for the installation of construction of property border security infrastructure and improvements. Now, this one I thought was pretty interesting because the state, or I would say people who are in support of this amendment, say that they want more people to be able to donate land to the government, whether it be state government, federal government, to increase border security, whether that be fences, whatever border security looks like. And some property owners are worried, hey, if I give this up and someone moves in, they build a wall, they build some pipes, they need to build up this land, is my tax bill going to go up because of that? And now the legislators have put this as an amendment to the Constitution as well.
Well, certainly I'm not a realtor, but if I had a big wall on my property, if it looks anything like the wall near the Benson State Park, if I had that in my backyard, I don't know if that would increase or decrease my property values, because it's a big wall.
It is a big wall, and I know that the wall is part of it, but I also know that there are other improvements that they need to make in those areas, rather than just put up a wall and walk away. You have to put some roads in if you're going to, station some people there, that sort of thing. You're going to need sewage lines, things like that. So I think that that's what is the idea behind this. And opponents, of course, will say, well, we'd rather not have more people donating land to the federal and state government to build walls, say.
To each his own, I guess. Keep in mind, most of the land on the United States-Mexico border is privately owned. So I think the government is doing the right thing by trying to provide some form of compensation to property owners should they be amenable to donating land or having land taken through eminent domain in order for there to be border security infrastructure projects.
All right, so we do have some updates now on some. We're going to have some updates really soon about some of these propositions that are coming in. And Robert, I know that we had talked about this before we came on, and you wanted to talk about some of these sort of preemptive amendments. These would be amendments to Proposition 2, Proposition 6, Proposition 8, essentially saying that we are going to enshrine in the Texas Constitution that certain types of taxes cannot be levied, including securities, which is a big thing now with approval for the stock exchange now going ahead in Dallas, as well as inheritance taxes. The legislature wants to put in front of voters the option to say you cannot do this unless we have another constitutional amendment that repeals these.
I mean, I look at these in a couple different ways. Number one, it's, forgive me, but anti-tax theater. There were no efforts, as far as I know, to implement any of these taxes in Texas presently, and essentially, it's a solution in search of a problem. It doesn't look like there were a lot of people saying we're going to add some new taxes with inheritance or estate taxes or taxes on securities. Yet they felt compelled to preemptively prevent future legislatures from having that tool in their toolbox. And I think that's unfortunate that for some, hysteria over taxation leads to these types of efforts that might hamstring the ability of future leaders, future elected officials, from meeting the needs of the people of Texas during a crisis. We certainly never want to see a crisis, and we never hope for one. We never know when one is coming. But when one is, if we're unable to meet the needs of the people, that could result in certainly a decline in the quality of life, and perhaps even decline in the trust in government. When the government says, well, we'd like to help, but we can't. We don't have the funds. We don't have the ability to even raise those funds.
Right. And this goes back a little bit to what we were talking about the things look relatively good now, but what happens if something were to happen? And that is definitely a point that opponents of this measure, of these measures, had taken. Also, as you were saying earlier, the Constitution in Texas is a little easier to amend than, say, the federal Constitution. But if at some point the legislature decides, hey, we need to raise taxes and we have these other avenues with which to go, they will be barred from doing that again without a constitutional amendment to amend or repeal this particular constitutional amendment or these amendments.
I think it's interesting that of the 50 states, Texas's constitution is the second longest because of this, second only to Alabama, interestingly enough. But just because this is how Texas tends to legislate. Now, you could argue maybe there will be less of this if we had a professional full-time legislature like some of the other largely populated states. And even some of the less populated states have full-time legislatures. So I'm not sure if there's an appetite for that in Texas. I will come clean and say, I'm not from here originally. So my political socialization was not within the state of Texas. But as someone who believes, again, in small d good government, I think limiting the ability of future legislatures and taking tools out of the tool bag is overall kind of a bad idea.
All right. Well, now we have a couple of updates now on some of these propositions, some of these constitutional amendments. Let's go first to Texas Proposition. Proposition 1, we got 20% of the vote in, and this is the funding TSTC system. And look, we got 70% for. Yep, 70% for funding. And like I said, this is 20% of the vote. Now, I just want to let viewers in on something right here where it says 20% up in your right-hand corner. There may be times where you see numbers in the for or against or some of the candidates that we're going to discuss later. And up in the right-hand corner, it'll say 0%. That means that those numbers are coming from early voting only. But because we have this 20% in right here, that means these are the early voting numbers as well as the numbers that have been the ballots that have been cast today, at least 20% of them.
Well, and if this trend continues, again, I already said I'm biased as an educator. Funds for higher education are something that I think is always a good investment because education doesn't just benefit the individual. It benefits the community. It benefits the neighborhood. It benefits the state. when their population is higher. It attracts business. I know that a lot of people talk about, well, taxes. Want to make sure taxes are low for a good business climate. Well, there are a lot of things that go into making it a good business climate, including an educated population and proper infrastructure and roads and bridges and public transit and things like that. So adequate housing that's affordable, that people who are going to work at these businesses that are coming in will be able to use their salaries, their wages, so that they can afford to live in the Valley. Again, I think this is a good sign. If the trend continues here with more Texans supporting this than opposing it, I think, well, it's certainly great for our technical college system to have a solid source of funding instead of, and we all know public budgets being what they are, that it can be challenging to make an argument for additional allocations for public goods like education.
All right, now let's head over on to Proposition 2. This is one of the ones that we had just talked about. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to jump over to Proposition 4. This is the water infrastructure proposition that we talked about. And again, we're looking at 20% in. That is early voting and same-day voting, votes from today. And that one, again, 72-28, and even minor, but in even bigger getting bigger support, larger support, more numbers coming in for that one.
Sure. I mean, again, these are encouraged. In low information elections and in low turnout elections, your vote as a voter has a lot more power. And so that's one of the reasons why I always encourage students to vote. I never ask them how they're going to vote. I just say, go out there, exercise your right. It gets you into the good habit of voting, which is really the bare minimum expectation in a democracy like ours for the people. I mean, there's the heavy lifting of democracy is done between elections, but at least voting if you're eligible and if you're registered. So thanks to all those who are making their voices heard. Politics does work. It's a game. Some people view it as a game, but it's a game with consequences, and we're starting to see that as the returns are coming in.
All right. We got another one. We got Proposition 13, another one that we had discussed. Proposition 13 is the increased property tax exemption from school districts. And this one, as you might expect, 18% in on this one, and 84-16. And this, I'm going to touch on this now, and I'll probably mention this again throughout the show, is that constitutional amendments, I want to say somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% get passed. This isn't a coin flip when it's been debated, gotten through the legislature, been introduced, and gotten to this point. They almost always pass. And sometimes it's not as wide a margin as we're seeing right now, but by and large, they pass pretty regularly.
Well, and think about the people that are turning out this year are people that are, highly interested in politics. Right. For those that simply look at federal elections, maybe, there's really no one that I know on the ballot. There's no city council, there's no mayor. Why would I turn out for this? I mean, these are really important. And while Texas doesn't have initiative and referendum so that citizens can put ballot initiatives on the ballot.
Right. We don't have a mechanism.
We don't have a mechanism like that here in Texas. This is one of the ways that Texans can express their feelings for direct democracy, being able to decide yes or no on a constitutional amendment.
And an off year.
And an off year. Yeah, that's a good description of it. Sure. I mean, the first year I got here in 2019, there were 9 constitutional amendments on the ballot. I'm like, wow, seems like a lot for constitutional amendments. But in Texas, that's obviously more common than elsewhere.
That's the way it's done in the Lone Star State. And we're going to move on to Proposition 17. We've got an update on that as well. Got some more numbers coming in there. We might need to wait a second. Oh, there we are. Proposition 17. Now this one, 18% in and a little bit closer. And I wonder if there is a difference of a lot of people who don't live on the border. I mean, if you live in Dallas, you live in Austin, I mean, Longview, maybe this doesn't mean as much to you. And so even if you went to the ballots, you filled it out, you turned it in, maybe we just don't see a lot of support for it, not necessarily opposition to it, but just support for.
And interesting, at least at this stage, and it's early, obviously, it's very early, but this one only has 18% in, while the other ones had 20% in. So still around 500,000 votes cast on these in these first few returns here. And once again, we see almost double the amount of people voting in favor as opposed to voting against in this particular thing. And I think you're onto something there, Brian. If the amendment that people are seeing on their ballot doesn't affect them locally,
Right.
Then they might be less inclined to, and maybe they even understand that if we provide a tax relief for one group of Texans, that means that the burden could be increased for other groups of Texans in the future.
All right. And some of these amendments throughout the years have been hyper local. You know, whether a certain city or say a MUD can become a taxing entity, it needs to go through the constitutional amendment, and everyone gets to vote on, say, what El Paso is up to.
Sure. I mean, the first year I was in the Valley, there were three. I live in Edinburgh, and there were 3 bond initiatives on the ballot that year, and one of them passed by just a handful of votes. I think 3 or 4 votes. So, in elections like these, what did you say? Off year, right? Your vote has more power.
That's right. It goes a longer way.
Goes a longer way.
Right. We are going to check in on some of these local races now, and we are, once again, one of the big races tonight is Edinburgh. They are choosing a mayor and 2 city council races. Our Jorge Vela is live out there, and he's got more information about the Edinburgh mayoral race. Jorge, how's it going out there?
Definitely. We're still waiting for results. We're here at the headquarters of Richard Molina and his office. Barely people are getting here to this location. We haven't seen the candidate as well. We'll be checking out the other headquarters throughout the night as well. And we saw a lot of action today. There was a lot of people. There was a lot of people voting in the last minute.
With Jorge there. We'll try and get those results for you as soon as we can. Going back to Proposition 17 here. And we have, like I said, there are 17 constitutional amendments on the ballot this year. Not a record, but very close to a record. So we're going to be tracking those. And we're going to take a quick break here. We will be back in a few minutes, and we're going to look at more of those constitutional amendments as those numbers keep going in. We're going to see if we can't get Jorge Vela back and see what he has to say about the Edinburgh mayoral race. And we're also going to be looking at several other local races that we are tracking. Stay with us. This is Valley Central Plus. And your local election headquarters coverage of election night here in the Valley. I'm joined now by 2 guests. I'll let them introduce themselves. First, this is Alex Martinez. How are you doing this evening?
Thank you so much, Brian, for having me. Glad to be here. Glad to be able to talk politics with all of y'all. So thank you for having me.
All right. And what group are you with?
I'm with the UTRGV College Democrats, and I am the current president for this fall semester.
All right. Well, we want to thank you for joining us. And then over here we have Alexis Uscanga. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ryan. And I'm Alexis Uscanga. I'm the president of the RGV College Republicans.
All right. Well, we appreciate you guys coming in tonight. How's it been tonight? Have you guys been watching the results?
Absolutely. Yeah, I just saw that the Democrats flipped the Virginia governor's seat, so very excited for that.
That is a little further afield, although we are going to be talking about California later. So you guys were here and you heard some of our discussion about some of these propositions that we were talking about. We got a few early results from these propositions. Now, Proposition 1 is the supporting the educational system and providing a stable source of funding for TSTC. Now, I don't know if this is a partisan issue, or did either one of you in your organizations or party affiliations take a stance on this issue?
Well, in my end, not really. You know, I think supporting Texas State Technical College is a top priority, should be a top priority for our representatives, because that's our education. I know a lot of friends, a lot of family members that attend TSCC, and creating that fund will be critical for future funding.
Yeah, us Democrats, we did support this because obviously we do want as much funding as possible for colleges. So we think a TSTC deserves that funding as well.
Yeah, who says bipartisanship is dead? Next, we have Proposition 4 for the Texas Water Fund to allow for the allocation of uses for sales revenue. What did your group think about this one, Alexis?
For that one, we had a lot of we were looking at a lot of scorecards around the conservative areas, like Texas Scorecard, Texas Policy Foundation, and typically, it's something that is more regional to us. We have a lot of drought issues in the valley, and so that's why a lot of us supported this initiative. But I get the concerns by a lot of conservatives where it locks in a fund and it's basically put into the Constitution, and legislative change will be hard to do so. So it's one of those shaky areas where some of us support it, some don't. But typically, I already see that the election for that specific proposition has already been decided. So I think we're going to have that one passed.
Yeah, we did see briefly a little slide there showing that even more of that vote has been counted. We're now up to 33% in, and those margins are still holding. I believe it was 70-30 the last time we looked, so they are still holding.
Yeah, so we also agree with voting yes for this proposition because we do agree that water should be available for everyone down here in the valley, especially because of the droughts that we've been facing. So, like I said, we did vote yes on this proposition.
All right, and now moving on over to Proposition 13. This is the one that has the exemption of the residents' homesteads from the ad valorem taxation and increases that from its current $100,000 to $140,000. Now, Alex, what was your position on this one?
I think a lot of Republicans are going to agree that we love tax cuts, right? No more. We don't want more taxes to keep increasing. So we did support that proposition.
Is there some concern that if there are, I don't know if you can have too many tax cuts, but if the tax cuts come to such a point where the state will then have to step in for some of these costs, especially for school districts? I know Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick was very, very happy to try and declare that people would not be paying for school property taxes. A lot of groups would not be paying for school property taxes. Is there a concern that at some point the state might have to step in if you're not collecting that much tax revenue?
At this current moment, no. I think we've seen it in our state where we have a budget surplus, especially statewide. We do collect a lot of taxes from other various groups, right? So I think we'll be fine with this proposition.
And Alex, what was the Democratic position on this one?
Yeah, we voted yes as well for this one because we do think that this helps modest value homes as a tax cut. So we fully agree with that and helping the regular working class people.
Look at this. We're just shaking hands and agreeing on everything. This is what I like to see. Let's move over here to Proposition 17 now. And this is the exemption from ad valorem taxation for market value of real property located in counties that border Mexico and the United States from the installation of that construction of border security infrastructure. Now, where were you on this issue?
Yeah, so we voted no for this one because we do believe that it diverts a tax towards militarized projects, which we don't really see the benefit for the communities down here. So that's why we voted no on this proposition.
Is there not some, if someone owns their own land and they want to donate it and then they end up receiving a higher tax bill for that, aren't they then paying a penalty for trying to do what they think is right or to help the government or help the country, as it were?
So you're saying that if they willingly give up their land?
Correct. If they donate their land or donate for the use of their land, but while still retaining ownership of it.
Well, I feel it's kind of weird that these people need a tax cut if they have this much land. So I don't think, like I said, this will help the regular person out. So that's why we voted no on that.
Alexis, I feel like you might take an opposing view on this one.
Yeah, we supported this proposition. I mean, there's a lot of a lot of properties alongside our southern border. And, the state of Texas and the U.S. government have been building our border fence in order to prevent illegal immigration from occurring. And I believe if, those property owners want to donate that land and, for the good of border security, they shouldn't be punished for it with rising taxes, rising property values. So I believe this is a good proposition to help those out who are doing the right thing and trying to donate land to the federal government or the Texas government in order for border security to be enforced.
Now, jumping off what the discussion that we just had about taxation from 100,000 to 140,000, and most of the constitutional amendments are some sort of tax break or banning taxes to be collected. Again, my question is, if we are, again, the royal we, if we are knocking down taxes for a lot of different populations, is there a concern then? I mean, you said that, we got a surplus now. Is there a concern that at some point things may not be going that well and we might turn around and find that we just don't have enough tax dollars coming in?
I think we have a strong economy. I know that Texas collects money through a lot of different ways. So as of right now, we do not have that much concern over the ways that the state government is going to be collecting taxes because of that surplus that I mentioned. It was $24 billion surplus, I believe, this past year. So I think we'll be pretty much fine with preventative taxes.
Yeah, because as you folks at home can see right there, Texas Proposition 17, that is the Border Security Infrastructure Tax Exemption Amendment. We have 34% vote in, and that one is a 60-40 split right now. And let me bring up something that I had spoken with Mr. Velez about, the idea that maybe other people in other parts of the state are not voting for or against this one because it just doesn't affect them.
Yeah, so obviously we do want to vote for this one down here just because of the area that we're at. But I do agree that maybe people that are more up north and not close to the border don't really mind about this proposition specifically.
And how about you, Alexis?
I said, I think these propositions are not that controversial for I think it's mostly like people are picking and choosing based on what their needs are, especially local needs. Like here in the Valley, we have much more different needs than up in North Texas.
All right. So then another subject that I addressed with Mr. Velez earlier were propositions 2, 6, and 8, what we kind of called the preemptive amendments, banning the imposition of taxes on securities, on inheritance, things like that. Is there a danger that we are painting future legislatures into the corner?
Well, I do agree that it is pretty dangerous codifying in the Constitution certain tax exemptions just because we don't know whenever we do need to do a tax increase on these specific ones, like you mentioned, 2, 6, and 8. Like you mentioned, it's capital gains taxes, financial transaction taxes, and estate taxes. But obviously, we don't want to add that into the Constitution because, like I said, people's taxes do go up, do go down. So I just feel like this hurts the middle class more in the future because then the money would have to come from somewhere, and it probably would be from the middle class.
With the establishment of the stock exchange in Dallas, is there... What would you say to the idea that when a venture like that is just getting started and there are no taxes and investors now and in the future can say it's written into their constitution that I won't have to pay taxes on this, I'm comfortable putting my money in there or participating in that new stock exchange? What would you say to that maybe that is hindering investor dollars going forward?
I believe that just doing this in general wouldn't sway anyone away because Texas has been booming in terms of its economy. We've brought a lot of businesses down here. I know Dallas is a big tech hub right now, so I really doubt that if these don't pass, that people would be swayed away from investing in the state of Texas.
And Alexis, is this tying the hands of future legislatures if they need to raise revenue?
I don't believe so. I think Texas has a thriving economy. We have so much different sectors to work from. And with so many companies moving into Texas, I believe we'll be able to connect that revenue somehow. But these preventative measures are established to make sure that the legislature doesn't, continue any projects without the people's approval. And I think that should be statewide, right? Having the people's approval to do big projects or anything that raises our taxes.
Well, the way the political winds have been blowing in the state for quite some time, and no Democrat has won statewide office in decades. Was there really a danger that there was going to be a proposal for an inheritance tax or some of these other taxes that the legislators are now asking the voters to enshrine in the Constitution?
I think they just wanted to have those preventative measures just in case in the future, and also to keep Texas thriving and booming, and to keep businesses here. I think that's what the legislature wants to do and emphasize, keeping businesses here in Texas and bringing in more.
Now, speaking of some money issues, we have some bond elections going on in Brownsville and over at PSJA. Brownsville specifically, they are looking for money to improve and update some of their facilities, and they also want to build a performing arts center over in FAR, the PSJA. They want to acquire some more equipment, more buses, purchase more land. Also, they've got a second bond amendment, and they also want to build their own performing arts center. Where do you stand on the bond issues?
Yeah, so in terms of the PSJ one, we fully agree with both Proposition A and Proposition B, because Proposition A allocates a lot of money for replacement of equipment, that be air conditioning units, roof repairs, or parking improvements. And we also do agree that that area does deserve a performing arts facility upgrade, because the better buildings that we have, the more investment and the more activities there are down here. And it's the same for Brownsville, that they want to build a $75 million performing arts center. It's the same thing over there as well. Same idea.
Is there a danger that when both of these districts are going to the voters and saying we need to raise your taxes, or we need to send out this bond money, but we also want performing arts centers? Is there a danger that voters look at that and say, well, why do you want this if you are needing equipment, needing air conditioning units? If there are structural things that we need to change, maybe we don't go for a performing arts center at this point.
Exactly. I do agree with that. I think that was one of the main issues that I've heard a lot in Brownsville. You know, I'm not from Brownsville, so I can't really speak a lot on this issue, but I know a lot of people there. The Cameron County Republican Party took a stance against the bonds because of the Performing Arts Center, because, you know, also we need more transparency on where this money is going to be located. And whenever they said the Performing Arts Center is tied in with the bond, that just threw a lot of people off.
All right. Speaking of the Brownsville ISD bonds, we've got our Sandy Torres is out there, and she is joining us live now to give us an update on the bonds. She's talked to a couple of people tonight about this issue, and let's see what she has to say. Sandy, how's it going out there?
Brian, how are you? I know that you're holding it down for us over there in Harlingen. And well, I'm over here in Brownsville. I'm actually here in the boardroom, and well, there's some early numbers trickling in that's from early voting, though. That's not from tonight. So here in Brownsville, now we have two propositions. We're talking about Proposition A and Proposition B. Now the total price tag on that is around $460 million. Proposition A is around $385. Now that's going to cover things like a new HVAC system, roofing, parking, drainage, you name it. Also a trade center. Now, Proposition B is talking about a new arts facility. The price tag on that is $75 million.
$75 million. Yeah, that's right. We were just having this conversation there, that there are two separate things, and one of our guests here with the RGV College Republicans saying that there might be some. He's heard that there might be some vote splitting where people may assume, say, hey, I'm all for maintenance, I'm all for this, but maybe a performing arts center at this time, not the right use of our tax dollars.
And, it's interesting you say that, because as we were getting ready for our lives earlier today, we got stopped by a couple of women that were just around the corner from the administration building itself, and they were just not for the bond at all. They were saying that they don't believe that they should be paying for these renovations or this bond. They didn't really like the way that the board was handling things, and we'll be able to hear from them later tonight as our election coverage continues. But as well as we've been hearing all day long, from Superintendent Jesus Chavez as well as Board President Daniela, they've been talking about why it is important to do these renovations, saying that it's just been way too long, and the longer you wait, inflation and numbers go up. So it is a very, very split vote.
That's right. And over in PSJA as well, there's a lot of bond issues out there. Thank you, Sandy. We will check back in with you in a little while when we got some more numbers out there. And one of our fantastic people working over here at Digital Row to get us all this information, Ali Yanez, has just handed me some information about voting that is going on. Let me just make sure I have this. Okay, constitutional voting amendments. All right, let's just give you some quick numbers here for State Proposition 2. We had covered that one a little bit earlier. That one is going to be that one's 67-32 in favor. State Proposition 4, which we had also covered, that one 73-26. Now, State Proposition 8. That one is at 73-27. Yeah, there we go. State Proposition 4. That one is at 70-30. These numbers are coming in. You see 35% now. We are getting more numbers as they come in across the valley for these local and these statewide elections. We are going to take another break here, and we are going to be right back with State Representative Erin Gomez. She's going to be joining us, and we're going to talk constitutional amendments with her as well. And we'll be right back after this, your local election headquarters, Valley Central Plus. Welcome back to your local election headquarters here at Valley Central Plus and on valleycentral.com. We got a guest coming in tonight now for it's State Representative Erin Gomez, Democratic representative representing District 38 in Brownsville. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight, Representative.
Hi, Brian. Good evening. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you're so enthused. Let's talk some constitutional amendments, shall we?
Of course, it's election night. We're always enthused.
How closely are you looking at those returns coming in now for these amendments?
We're seeing them coming in. We're excited about the progress that's being made, and obviously, we were anticipating these results for the most part.
Now, I was speaking to one of our guests earlier, and it seems like the constitutional amendments usually aren't a coin toss. Usually, when they've gotten to this point, more than not, they pass. Is that what you expected to see tonight?
Absolutely, that's fair to say. We try to get them down on the ballot as simply as possible in plain language as possible for the public to understand, and for the most part, they're things that the body agrees on.
All right, now let's try and ask you about things that the body doesn't agree on. I know that there are a couple of issues on here that you have taken issue with. No pun intended. And can you tell me what some of the amendments that you are staunchly against? I'll say.
So right off the bat, I would love to talk about Proposition 12, which seemed to be tied to judicial pay raise. It was a proposition in support of a judicial conduct committee, which would have allowed the executive branch to appoint non-lawyers to oversee, as political appointees, to oversee the Code of Judicial Conduct. Obviously, we're strongly against any sort of politics from the executive branch that is allowed to come in and interfere with our judiciary, with their independent governance over their courtrooms. So Proposition 12 was going to be a very difficult issue for us on the floor, and Democrats were staunchly against it for the most part. And that's very concerning. Anytime we start to see that overreach from the separation of powers in what should be our three independent branches of government.
Now, I'm glad you're here because I'd love to dig down a little bit deeper on this one. This is going to change the makeup of the Judicial Oversight Commission. Can you tell us what it is now and what the constitutional amendment would change it into?
Right. So currently, there's multiple appointed individuals. The governor, in particular, is allowed to appoint, in this case now, non-lawyers to the commission to oversee judicial conduct. So anytime we have a grievance against a judge, we have complaints against the judiciary, this independent body oversees that and decides whether or not a judge should receive, for example, a private reprimand, a public reprimand, potentially a sanction, or even sometimes, in the worst case, discussions of removal. So this is very concerning when we're extending the executive's power to appoint more non-lawyers to this board to oversee, again, what should be judges' independence in their own courtroom. These are independently elected individuals by your community, by the public, who will now be overseen and scrutinized by gubernatorial appointees who might not even be lawyers.
Well, this is, I know that people who are in favor of this amendment say that there are only a few citizens on this commission now, and that number would increase, and say that the larger number of just regular Texans who are taking a look at judicial actions is more, again, small d, democratic.
Right. Obviously, there is a concern, and anytime we have, again, political appointees being tasked to oversee a branch of government, and in particular, we always run the threat of it being a potential political hit or a potential political issue of, are we going to scrutinize one bench over another because of a perceived, for example, affiliation with the Democratic Party? That's always going to be a concern. And anytime we're appointing non-lawyers to a committee, for example, I wouldn't suggest that for the Board of Medical Examiners to appoint non-doctors, non-medical examiners to oversee medicinal conduct. So obviously, we're concerned about the scrutiny.
Okay, so do you think that commission should not be? Do you think it's okay the way it is now?
I do. I absolutely do. And again, as an attorney, I do think attorneys should be individuals who are trained and taught, who have been through law school to respect and took an oath to uphold the Constitution, should be the type of individuals that are overseeing judicial conduct.
During the legislative session, was there a lot of pushback on this idea?
Oh, this idea, again, was debated extensively. Absolutely. Yes.
But it has ended up in front of the voters, and like I say, most of these at this point do pass. In fact, let me look at it right now. This is Proposition 12.
Correct.
Which is right now the last thing that I've just been handed is 70-34. 70 to 34 in favor of, I should say.
Right. And again, the way these items are written, it makes absolute sense that the public would think that the oversight is a good idea. I understand that. Then this is what happens sometimes when we have these off-cycle elections where we're going to have we have a committed voter that's going to vote right now. This is hard to explain these nuanced issues to millions of individuals. So again, these things are teed up for a reason. Another item, Brian, that I would like to tell you that's particularly was a hot topic was the issue of Proposition 16. The way Proposition 16 was written on the ballot seemed to lead citizens to believe that it was not already in our Constitution that non-citizens could not vote. So that issue was an issue that was hotly debated on the Texas House floor. Why would we continue to put up a redundancy, a repetitive issue on the ballot, which leads voters to believe, almost was it with the intent to scare voters into thinking, oh my goodness, there's some exception in Texas law that allows non-citizens to vote, when that couldn't be further from the truth. If you read our Constitution, we know it's already in Article 6, Section 2. It says, in order to be a qualified voter, you shall be deemed a citizen of the United States. There was no mistaking it. It was not happening. And if that wasn't clear enough, it's in 5 separate statutes stating only a citizen can vote, can be registered to vote. And if it wasn't clear enough, you and I can go Google right now the Secretary of State's website, and you will see very clearly that only citizens of the United States shall be deemed registered to vote.
I actually did see some of this debate or some of this discussion with you and another legislator who was saying that we are just putting it in. It is already in a place where it says who is eligible. We are simply adding it to a place to spell out who is ineligible. Is there something wrong with that?
It is an unnecessary, repetitive, repetitious, and redundant effort on behalf of a party to scare citizens into thinking that somehow this was lawful in the state of Texas. When, make no mistake, it was never lawful. It was not yesterday. And as a result of Proposition 16 being voted in, it is not now more clear that only citizens are allowed to vote. But I understand the effort to push people to the polls in a sense of fear tactic of potentially this could happen if we don't put this in a second time in the Constitution. And again, if it wasn't already clear in 5 separate statutes.
It's who would you keep saying that there people might be scared. Can you explain that position? Maybe I'm not sure I'm getting that. Who would be scared that there was a change in the law?
Right. For whatever reason, there seems to be an alarmist narrative of perhaps we're going to allow somebody to slip through, a non-citizen voter to slip through and register to vote if we don't codify this into law. Again, the proposition as it's written implies that it is not already effectively a part of the Constitution. The undertone seems to be, if we don't do this, this will happen.
Now I want to shift gears a little bit because the story of the Texas legislative session was redistricting and Democrats walking out so that there was a quorum. Now, in response tonight, it will go far afield from Texas and the Valley over in California. They're voting on Proposition 50, which is the only measure on the ballot in California tonight, saying that they want to skip over or bypass their nonpartisan redistricting committee as a counter, I guess, against what Texas wanted to do in getting those 5 seats in the House of Representatives.
Right.
Where do you see that fight?
I think it's a fascinating phenomenon, Brian, and I'm so glad you brought this up because make no mistake, Democrats tried extremely hard to bring this up when we had this debate on the floor saying, please allow this issue. This issue should go to the people. This issue is of extreme importance. I mean, it dictates the way you and I vote in our community. It dictates what our voices and our votes are worth, and it dictates whether our communities are allowed to vote as a whole or stripped into thirds as they were, right? So in this case, we said, let's put this, if there's something that we're going to put on the ballot that is not a redundancy, it should be allowing the citizens to decide whether or not we would like to do this mid-decade, meaning outside of a census era, right? And in this case, we were not allowed to do that. California is a state that does that, saying, hey, if we are going to do this, let's let the people decide. Let's hear what millions of citizens and voters want to say regarding their districts if they feel like they should be redrawn. So for one, I want to herald the process. I'm glad to see that it's happening. What's fascinating is that we've now seen some of the rhetoric that's going on in California. We've seen that Republicans have actually spent multiple millions of dollars using the exact same logic and reasoning that Democrats were using here in Texas, right? Except Democrats didn't have millions of dollars to push this narrative. We only had our voices and the willingness of news and anchors like yourself to say, hey, this is a newsworthy topic. Let's talk about it. So because of media coverage across the United States now, Democrats were able to teach millions of Americans what the word gerrymandering means and how it disenfranchises communities.
Would
But Republicans are actually using millions of dollars in California to say, hey, do not allow Democrats to dilute your voice. I mean, the same exact logic and reasoning is being implied by Republicans in the inverse in
Would-
California.
would you describe the Democratic quorum break as successful?
Without a doubt, I would, it arguably is one of the, and again, this doesn't happen very often, but without a doubt, if a measure of success is that across the United States of America, the polling now strongly shows that the average American is against the concept of gerrymandering, meaning rigging an election, a state for the benefit of a political party. So to the extent that that is a measure of success, I think households across the United States of America are sitting down at dinner and talking about this concept and talking about fundamental fairness and talking about what it means to vote as a community. And so, without a doubt, a resounding success.
Now, I want to ask about again about redistricting, about the case. Lawmakers took the state to court about this, and it is still in an El Paso courtroom. And to figure out whether these maps will stand, the filing deadline for next election is in 4 days. So, have you heard any update on that, on where that case is?
Brian, and I'm so appreciative of you staying up to date with that. I love the conversations that you and I have, and you're always on top of it. So you're correct. In El Paso, they are currently litigating this matter, the issue of the fairness of the maps, the issue of on what basis were these maps drawn? Were they drawn to disproportionately affect race and socioeconomic status? And in that, under sworn oath and testimony, they've taken multiple depositions. The attorneys have found that Republicans have stated under oath they were simply handed these maps by DC Politico insiders stating, this is the map you will pass. When they were asked under oath, Republicans, how much did you participate in this process? What data, what did you review to actually pass these maps? They said none. That is astonishing. And it's so disappointing to see that we would have a party in power just rubber stamp that effort. And so we are eagerly awaiting and anticipating to see what the judiciary does in El Paso and how that will affect the upcoming primaries.
Is there a chance that they go beyond the 8th and we still don't know exactly which map we're going to use? Because this means a lot to us down here. We had 2 districts down here that were several districts down here that were targeted. Targeted, I guess, may not be the right word, but
You are correct.
in the process that were redrawn. What happens if the court case goes beyond the filing deadline? What does that mean for next year?
It is very obviously we hope to not find ourselves in that position. We would love to know with certainty what maps our congressmen and women are going to run in, but that would be quite the pickle to find ourselves in if we do have to change primary deadlines. And you are correct in that this would affect whether or not the new maps, for example, remove 294,000 Valley voices out of Congressional District 34 and move them into almost north of Nueces County. That reduces the Valley voices by over 38% in that district. It is no longer a Valley-based district. So for the sake of South Texas, this is huge. South Texas is a just phenomenally unique area. We're one of the only areas in the entire state and nation that has both sea, land, and airports. Our water needs, you and I have talked about this extensively, are very unique. So when you fundamentally shift where the nucleus of a district like that is, we're talking, I mean, again, this isn't a red or blue issue. We're talking about a green issue. We're talking about lifelines down here. And we need to make sure that the nucleus of South Texas is in South Texas.
We want to thank you for joining us. At State Representative Erin Gomez, representing District 38 in Brownsville. Appreciate your time this evening and for joining us on a busy election night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. As always, take care. God bless.
All right, so that was State Representative Erin Gomez. Had a lot to say about some of these proposals and these constitutional amendments that are on the ballot and being voted on. And from the last numbers that I have been handed are getting not overwhelming, but I will say getting quite a bit of popular support. We've got a couple of other races, also local races, that we want to take a look at. And here in a little bit, we're going to want to check in with our Jorge Vela. He is over in Edinburgh, and he's got his eyes on the mayoral race. We see still have a 0% in right now. So that is those numbers not yet coming into us, but this is a 4-person race, and there's a lot of moving parts in a 4-person race. Jorge Vela is live out here in Edinburgh, and he joins us now. Jorge, how you doing out there?
Hey guys, we're here at the Richard Molina headquarters. We're still waiting for those results. Hidalgo County hasn't released any. The people here are just waiting. They're in suspense. They're waiting for that. I've been texting with the other candidates as well. They say they're in the same line. They're just waiting for any results. Now, before we left the Annex Building polling site, there was a long line of voters still waiting to cast their ballots. It was maybe about several dozens of people there waiting. And also one of the campaigns from the other candidates told me that the U2RGV polling site had much more people. So I mean, there's a lot of voters still that were voting way past 7 o'clock, and Hidalgo County does tell us that they report the first early results once all voters cast their ballots. So we're still here. We're waiting for any results. Here at the Richard Molina headquarters, everything's calm. People are just barely getting here. We saw people with signs drop off. So everything's pretty calm as they anticipate any results in this election.
All right, thank you, Jorge. I appreciate it. Now, just looking over some of these numbers that we have not gotten up on the screen yet, but I can report that the propositions, Brownsville propositions, we've got Proposition A looking at the maintenance funding, and Proposition B looking at the Performing Arts Center. The last look that I see here, we've got 59-41 against Proposition A, 62-37 against Proposition B. Oh, we've got the other numbers up here right now for us. So that it looks like voters, at least for the moment, this is, again, 0% in. So this just represents the early voting totals, does not take into account those who have cast their ballots today. It looks like Brownsville, at least for now, is saying no to these propositions. What are your thoughts about that, Alexis?
I think it's important that if Brownsville ISD wants to put these back up again for election, that they have more transparency, that they inform the voters and do for more auditing into why it costs so much. I heard it's like a $460 million bond that will be paid for over several years. So I think rightfully so, the Brownsville voters voted against it because they didn't have enough information to vote for it.
Do you think it was a lack of on the school district's part? I mean, there's only so much they can do as far as advocating for or against a measure.
I think they should have put up more like information sessions for voters to understand what these bonds would entail for them, especially in Brownsville. I mean, Brownsville is the seat of Cameron County, so it essentially, a lot of the Brownsville voters spoke up that they don't want continuing rising costs. I mean, we had the same kind of environment just a few months prior with the Cameron County Arena. There was a lack of transparency, and voters shut it down. And I think they're shutting down this again because of lack of transparency.
I believe for the third time, the Cameron County Arena. Yeah. Now, Alex, it looks like I spoke with our reporter who's out there earlier, Sandy Torres, and she says that if these don't pass, Brownsville's just going to sort of have to go status quo now. Is that going to be enough, or would you anticipate that the school district might come back again as soon as they can and say, okay, well, we've got either more information or find out why people are saying no to this if there is a genuine need?
I do believe that they should go back. I will give credit to Alexis in saying that there wasn't enough information on this stuff. unless you are what we call each other political nerds, you really don't know where all of these bonds and whatnot are going to. So I do think that they might go back into it, and they should, in fact, inform voters more on what exactly they're going to do with this money.
Now, I know that the Republican position, or some of the Republican position that I've heard, is that they would like to see more of an audit against about the Brownsville ISD. Is that something that you guys would support?
An audit?
An audit, a forensic. The question I think might be, as Alexis is saying, if there's not enough transparency, as you sort of echoed, there's not enough transparency in where the money has gone, and if voters are concerned about why can we not run the district effectively through general funding rather than trying to go out for a bond.
Yeah, well, I agree. If they want an audit and that's what the people want, then that's what they should get. But I feel like even having to talk about having an audit should not even be an issue. Like I said, people should already be informed on all of this. So that is a mistake on their end.
All right, now we got a couple more that I want to run through, and I'm not sure if we have the graphics for them yet. We've been handed this. We're going to take a look now at Harlingen. Harlingen Mayor Norma Sepulveda was running unopposed, and so she won her race. Now we look at Commissioner District 1. We've got Delia Cavazos Gomez and Richard Uribe, and that seat is going to be vacant because the incumbent decided to not seek re-election, and in that with 0% in, and again, just want to remind everyone, 0% in, but with numbers there on the side means that we are simply discussing early voting numbers, and this does not take into account votes that were cast today. That is Harlingen Commissioner District 1, and there was also another Commissioner District, and that would be District 2. Again, 0% of the vote in. Daniel Nemesio Lopez defeating Frank Puente. Daniel Lopez, he is the incumbent trying to fight off the challenge from Frank Puente. Again, 0% in, and that just means we are looking solely at early voting numbers. I think we're might take a quick break here and get everything together and make sure people can stretch their legs a little bit. I know that some of our guests would probably like to stretch their legs a little bit too. And we're going to be back with more election coverage right here at Valley Central Plus on your election headquarters. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And we want to welcome you back to your local election headquarters here at Valley Central Plus and valleycentral.com. We've got some more election results coming in tonight. And we've got over in Port Mansfield, they had a very important vote out there. They were voting to whether or not to incorporate. And there was one of our reporters, Jorge Vela, did a great piece that over the weekend that showed just how the idea of incorporation has been really tearing apart this small little town. And we've got 0% in right now for incorporation, and we've got against is 55% and for is 45%. And you'll see 53 votes to 43 votes. So at that point, the percentage, a 10-point percentage doesn't really mean it adds up a lot. Adds up quickly when you got that number of votes, the 10 percentage points there. But again, this is 0% in, so that means we are looking at only the early voting totals and not votes that came in today. And so we've got over in Port Mansfield, staying over in Port Mansfield, they also had a race for mayor over there. I want to take a quick look at that. Again, 0% in. We've got Ruben Garza Jr. and facing off against Holly Trojak. Again, very early in that race. It might look like it's a runaway just because of the 14 percentage points, but bear in mind too, we're talking about less than 100 total votes, and these are the votes, the early total votes, rather than the votes from today. Port Mansfield also have elections for 2 commissioners. At place 1, we have James Dunks leading Alan Price. And over in place 2 in Port Mansfield, we've got, we got Gary A. Burton, Fred Collins, and Robert Flores, a 3-person race there. And whenever you get beyond 2, there's always a chance of a runoff. So there could be a runoff. I actually would have to double check and make sure that that is a race that is runoff eligible. But again, as of right now, it's 0% in. Gary Burton, Fred Collins, and Robert Flores for the Port Mansfield Commissioner Place 2. And we're joined again by UTRGV Political Science Professor Robert Velez. Thanks for coming back.
Brian, Port Mansfield, really fascinating. I didn't realize they were trying to incorporate. That's fascinating. But as of 2023, their population was 157. So when you see some of these early returns, it looks like most of the people in Port Mansfield voted early. So there's only 157 as population. At least that's what I'm seeing here.
Well, there could be. I mean, I don't think so. That does sound about right according to our Jorge Vela and his reporting. But that means if you only have 100 voters in, you either may have another 50 people come to vote, or that may be just how many people are actually going to be voting in.
Yeah, that 1 to 57 seems like that's the population. So nearly all of them are voters. That's very interesting.
All right, we're gonna go over now to back to Brownsville and the BISD bond election over there. Remember, they had 2 bonds on the ballot, one for improvements, for maintenance, for upkeep, and one for a performing arts center. Now, Proposition A right there, right on your screen, that one was for the improvements, for the upkeep, to try and get a lot of these buildings up. We spoke with Superintendent Jesus Chavez several times about this matter, and he says that they have, I believe it's 39 campuses they identified where this money would go to, and right now it looks as if, again, and I'm going to keep saying this, is 0% in means only for early voting. As that number goes up in your right-hand corner, you're going to see that percentage fill in. You're going to see the numbers change after that, and those numbers will represent Election Day numbers today. But as of right now, we got 59% against and 41% for. Now, Robert, you had some questions about this. You mentioned to me earlier.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that the bonds are being issued to cover things that at least someone who's been somewhat familiar with public budgets, maintenance items like air conditioning units or upkeep on the building necessities, you would think that would be in an ongoing budget line. And so the fact that they even need a bond to, I mean, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds when it comes to public budgeting because it can be very confusing, but it's usually frowned upon to issue bonds for expenses that are ongoing, that are fixed costs. Right. Because once that bond money runs out, you still have those fixed costs. So I think it's reasonable to ask, why these bonds need to be issued for things that should be standard budget lines. Now, the answer might be that the school district's been underfunded, and that is unfortunately the case in many, when it comes to many public budgets. Yeah, they have to get kind of a shot in the arm or a flash of investment all at once because they've been underfunded for so long. Or, there are lots of other things we could say. I know there's speculation. At least I heard one of your guests talking about speculation about the need for transparency. And voters are right to want and desire transparency when it's their tax dollars that are going to be spent on these projects. So, it'll be interesting to see how this ultimately turns out. As you said, this is still early voting. Brownsville, the largest city by population here in the Rio Grande Valley in the 4 counties. So I don't know if I would call the bond measures any kind of bellwether as to how the other election results are going to turn out. Right. But it would certainly be interesting to see the final results.
Right, and it is interesting. You heard right when I had my earlier guest. There has been some talk of, do we need an audit? Where did this money go? Maybe we don't want to, have a tax increase if we're not comfortable with how you're spending money that we have already allocated to you. Now, this is Proposition A. That's the upkeep and maintenance one, and they also have Proposition B, and that was for the Performing Arts Center. Again, we have 0% in, and that one is doing at least right now, early days. I always have to throw in that caveat that this is very early in any sort of counting, but as of right now, doing even worse than Proposition A.
I mean, 6,100 votes and with a population of 191,000, it's early.
Right.
So we'd like to see the same day vote results and see how people turn out. Now, again, this is an off year. So, I certainly wouldn't expect there to be 25, 30, 40, 50% turnout. Certainly not in an off year, as you said. But, we'll see what happens. And yes, voters should want complete transparency when it comes to how their tax dollars are being spent, but it should be equally distributed, not just for the Brownsville district, unless there's perhaps some history of there being some problem with the books or whether or not. And keep in mind also, a lot of voters don't necessarily vote based on issues. I would say now on off-year elections, we're seeing people who are highly tuned in to things that are going on. So maybe they know some things that other voters don't.
Well, if all politics is local, I mean, you don't get much more local than the school district in the community.
Yeah, true. Definitely true.
So we are going to look right now over at the Harlingen commissioner race again. We're going to take a quick look at that and see if we have any updates on that one. Again, we're still looking at 0% in that one. What's interesting about this one, and I know we've harped upon this, and we probably will the whole night, Harlingen, not a terribly small city, but you're looking at 600 people who have voted, voted early. And so that seems like a low number even for an off year.
Well, and I think it's not unreasonable to ask questions a little bit more about the election infrastructure. We didn't talk about that. We talked about water infrastructure, but what about election infrastructure? The state of Texas, at least in my experience in the few years that I've been here, uses a very advanced technology, touch screen voting. There's a paper record that goes with that for those of us that are concerned about machines being manipulated somehow. There's no evidence of that. I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression. But how can it be that it's an hour and a half after the polls have closed, and with all this high tech, we still don't have results from some of these races that are particularly interesting here locally? The Edinburgh's mayor race, we looked before. There's still no update on that from Hidalgo County, and a couple of city council races in Edinburgh. And yes, I'm biased. I live in Edinburgh, but I'd be curious to hear from the Texas Secretary of State after this election cycle as to what might be the holdup on some of these electronic voting machines delivering results. One of the benefits of improving your technology infrastructure is that you should get results quicker.
And I'll just speak for the Harlingen system is that I live in Harlingen. My wife and I went out to vote today so I could get a nice I voted sticker so I could wear it today, and I've totally forgotten it, but just know that I voted. We did use the number 2 pencil and the Scantron voting there and slide that one through. So I guess we have not gotten the electronic updates that Edinburgh has.
That's what I had to do when I was in Nacogdoches in East Texas. It was still paper ballots, so...
All right, we are going to go now to back over to the Port Mansfield Incorporation election, and we have got a call on that. Now we have 100% in, and Port Mansfield has decided to not incorporate. 60-40 against, and it looks like the entire town and then some turned out for that one.
Yeah, more votes than voters. Again, I was looking briefly. I didn't do a lot of deep research on what the actual population is. But if it's 157 and there are 226 votes,
Yeah.
You know,
Maybe they
we
have
were talking about
updated numbers.
audits before. Maybe we need to do one of those in Port
don't
Mansfield.
stop.
No offense, Port Mansfield viewers.
But yeah, 60-40 in a very interesting election. Now that means that they are going to they're going to have some issues with the water. I forget the water taxing authority at the port out there. I know that was an issue that even spawned their incorporation. Talking to that, we got the Port Mansfield mayoral race now is done. We've got Ruben Garza taking that race 58-42 over Holly Trojak, and then we now have the commissioners' races for Port Mansfield. Commissioner race number 1, James Dunks, looks like is taking it over Alan Price. That one a very tight race. And in Port Mansfield, Commissioner place 2. Again, this is just the early voting. We got Gary Burton. Oh, no, I take that back. As we were watching, 45% for Gary Burton, 38% for Fred Collins. Robert Flores has 17%, and that is 100% in. And we will have to double check that to make sure some of these races are eligible for runoffs. Some are not. Some, if you just win, then you are in. And we'll just have to double check and make sure that we know whether this one specifically is headed to a runoff or if it is a situation where there will not be a runoff and whoever gets the most vote. And whoever gets the most votes. So we are going to move on now to some of the other discussions that we're having now. PSJA, they also had a bond election. We haven't seen anything yet from PSJA, but same type of thing as Brownsville. Here we go. PSJA Proposition 1, same type of thing as Brownsville. Theirs wasn't necessarily for upkeep, maintenance, things like that. They were looking to buy more buses, buy some land to expand, that sort of thing. But they also, in Proposition B, wanting to build a performing arts center. So it looks like as of right now, we don't have anything slotted there for PSJA's proposition, but we will. We do have a reporter out there in our team coverage here. We're going to hear from her, and she's going to pass along some information as soon as she can get it over to us. We've also got a couple of races that we have not gotten to, and I'm just being handed a slip of paper here, and this is interesting. Our director and anchor Rudy Morales had tried to tell me this a few times, and I did my best to not understand what he was saying, but I finally get it now. In this right here, this one that we're looking at right here, the 60-40 against, that means mayoral race, commissioners races, they don't count anymore.
Because they're not a city. So
They're not a city. What an interesting turn of events to say, hey, I won the mayor. I could have been mayor, but no. Port Mansfield deciding to not go with incorporation, trying to stay the way they are now, and so mayors and commissioners, not a factor, not a thing, as they have not incorporated and won't be a city. Although it is interesting because obviously there was some support for the idea of incorporation, yet 40%. We were talking about, maybe we don't have the exact number of residents who live there, but it's not a lot. If maybe a year or two down the road, I'm not sure when they can turn around and try and do this again. Maybe they are able to turn that around and they do incorporate. But as of right now, Port Mansfield has voted to not incorporate, and so they will not be a city, and we will not have they will not have a mayor, will not have city commissioners. I want to go through some of these state propositions now, because we had 17, and this is the only thing that everyone across the state is going to vote on. And in fact, in some places in the state, this is the only thing on their ballots. We had several races here across the valley, but we are, again, a very large geographic area compared to, your average city. So right now we're looking at Texas Proposition 1. We have 38% of the vote in for that. And we have 69% in favor, 31% against. Again, this is to set up a stable funding mechanism to fund the Texas State Technical College system, which is not part of the A&M system, not part of the UT system. It is its own separate collegiate system, and they do not have the endowment that those other institutions do.
And it looks like, they just saw a bit of an increase
Yeah.
in the percentages there, 70% for.
Yeah, so we got
30%
45% in now. So, 70-30, that one looks to be on its way to passage. At this point, I think it would be highly unlikely if in the next 55% of votes that come in, you get a 40% plus swing out of that. So we got that is Texas Proposition 1 for Texas State Technical College funding. And then we have Proposition 4. This is for the State Water Fund. Again, we've got 45% in for this one. We got 71% for, 29% against. And spoke to my two previous guests, Alex Martinez, Alexis Usconga, both from the UTRGV, both representing the Democratic and Republican college clubs there, and both of them saying that their parties were in favor of this, always saying, it's important to have water, it's important to have a water fund. So it looks like the state has agreed with them. Again, a pretty substantial margin there, so 45% in right now. And moving on to our next proposition that we have listed is Proposition 13. This is increase in property tax exemption from the school districts. This is the one that would increase the ad valorem exemption, homestead exemption from $100,000 to $140,000. I may have tripped over my words there. It increases the exemption for homesteads from the current $100,000 to $140,000. And that one, again, we're seeing 45% in, and overwhelming support for that one. I don't think you can characterize it any other way than that, 82% to 18%. And let's move on to our next proposition that we have here. I believe this one is going to be Proposition 17. And this one, 44% in, a little bit closer, and this is for the tax exemption for border security infrastructure. Make sure that folks who don't have, or at least the argument in favor of it is to make sure that folks who will give up their property for the state or federal government to do whatever border security infrastructure, that they will not see an increase in their property debt. And again, this one a little closer, and we're not seeing 1 million plus votes yet, even with 44% in. We talked about this earlier, that this people may just looked at their ballots and says, doesn't affect me, and moved on from there.
There's something really interesting about what I'm looking at, Brian, is a voter's guide that was issued by the League of Women Voters. I said that on Proposition 4, it's unusual for the League of Women Voters to endorse a ballot initiative or really get themselves involved in electoral politics.
Right.
But one of the cons, I guess we could call it, that they mentioned is that within that Proposition 4, it says that the proposed amendment transfers oversight of the monies that would be designated for this revenue to be put into a Texas water fund, oversight of the monies from the legislature to a governor-appointed Texas Water Development Board.
Right.
Now, again, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but
and you really can, because there's a lot of legalese trapped up in just those couple of words.
Yeah. But putting the responsibility for managing a fund and taking it from the legislature, which is generally has the purse strings, and putting that, and that's a pretty significant. What is it, $46.5 billion
billion a year for the next 20 years.
Yeah, I mean that's a big chunk of money to give the control of those monies to an independent board that is appointed by the governor.
Right.
Now, I'm not casting aspersion. I'm not making any, suggesting that there's any kind of impropriety. But that is something that could be of concern to some.
Right.
Moving the jurisdiction from the legislature to a board that's essentially appointed by the governor.
And we heard that from State Representative Aaron Gomez earlier. We discussed the Judicial Commission proposition, and again, that was one of her concerns, was moving, concentrating more executive power, more power in the executive, I should say, to remake that Judicial Commission and get more people in, also governor appointed. But I think I'd say a unitary executive theory has been kind of spreading throughout the country. A lot of people are going that way.
Yeah, I think that's a fair characterization, particularly at the federal level. We're seeing a lot of that concentrating of power within the executive branch, and it might seem a little what would they call themselves earlier, political nerds, to talk about checks and balances and separation of powers. That could be a very abstract concept, but there are reasons for that. It's by design to have checks and balances, so that when you're talking about making decisions about the public monies, that they are with the entity, the elected body that is elected by the citizens who are paying those taxes, rather than delegating that to another body that is not an elected body.
And speaking of elected monies and taxpayer monies and elected officials, we've got our Sandy Torres is out in Brownsville, and she is following the BISD bond election, and she is out there, and she has more information about this. Sandy, what are you hearing?
Brian, I sure do. And in fact, yeah, I'm still in Brownsville. You're still in Harlingen, but we're all doing this together, right? And I'm actually here in Brownsville. We're talking about two propositions, Proposition A and Proposition B. Like we've been telling you all day long, the price tag on that is $460 million. Proposition A, $385. And for the Prop B, that's around $75 million. Now, our digital girl, Mia Morales, just sent me in some numbers. And for Proposition A, it looks like there's a total of 8,000 votes already being contested for. Against Proposition A, 4,700 and some change. For it, 3,200. As far as Proposition B, again, this is the arts facility. For it, around 2,900 votes. Against it, 5,000. That's a little more than the folks that are against Proposition A. And again, that's a total of 8,000 contested votes. And just to talk a little bit more about what these propositions entail, again, this is a lot of like early voting numbers. Votes are still coming in. All of this is very, very preliminary. I'm going to go ahead and bring in the superintendent, Jesus Chavez, right here with me to join us. Dr. Chavez, we're starting to see these numbers trickle in, and we've been talking about this for a while. You and I got a chance to walk around one of these schools a couple of months ago, an elementary school. I even saw birds coming out of certain holes, and you told me about windows, new fire alarm systems. Seeing these numbers now, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that we're just going to have to do the basic things of repairing, right? It's not a situation of replacing a roof or replacing an air conditioning system, but fixing whatever we have in whatever way we can. It's not going to be the ideal situation, right? So that's where we are.
Earlier today, you and I were talking, and you told me that this might be a thing that might come up again, wanting to do this bond again. But you told me that numbers might just continue to get higher due to inflation.
Well, that's true. I mean, I think if you look at the cost of things going from one year to the next, prices go up. And so if we were to bring this back, let's say 2 years down the road, the numbers will actually probably be higher than they were this time around. And that's just the increase of costs as we go in time. And again, it'll be up to the community, to the board, whether, yes, we bring this back a year and a half, 2 years down the road. We'll be looking at that. And see what it is the community wants, see what
We
the
have
board
another
wants.
break.
And Brian, just before we send it back over to you, I want to ask him one more thing here. You know, we've been talking about this, and you've put it upon yourselves this entire season to inform the public. But now that you're seeing how things are shifting out, what are your feelings and thoughts on folks not really being for the new arts facility, but not really for Proposition 8 either?
Well, I'm certainly disappointed for our students, right? I'm disappointed for our teachers because we have to provide the education that we provide with the current conditions that we have. You know, are we able to go fix the corner of the roof? Yes, we can fix it, but it'll have a fix for maybe a year, 2 years, and then we'll get a downpour of rain and water coming through. So that's a situation that we have because we're not able to address the replacement of the roof. You know, it's the same thing with air conditioning systems. We have people who work with air conditioning systems on a weekly basis. Here, when you think of August, September, October, very, very hot situations in the classrooms, that's going to be repeated until these systems get replaced. And so to our parents, to our students, to our teachers, you know, I'm sorry that the community didn't support this. It means we go back to the same conditions that we've had in years past.
Thank you, Superintendent. And Brian, we'll be sending it back to you again. We continue to do this coverage. Numbers are still trickling in, and we'll bring you the latest here and on air.
Very much, Sandy. Really appreciate your time out there, and thank you to the superintendent there for speaking with us. So yeah, Robert, as we said that we just heard from the superintendent, Brownsville, and obviously he is disappointed as those numbers trickle in, but it looks like both of those bonds will fail. And he says when we come back to it, he says a year or two from now, we'll have to come back to it. But then at that point, because of costs, inflation, whatever, it's going to be more money. And so you could tell he's just very disappointed that voters did not go for the bonds this evening.
I mean, this is kind of the nature of public budgets, right? That especially in a political culture such as we have in Texas, it's a very anti-tax sort of political culture. And perhaps your earlier guests were correct in that they didn't do enough outreach to the voters, explain enough about why these costs are what they are and why the why they need the additional funds in the form of bonds. So
I will say that was our two earlier guests too. They both mentioned transparency, mentioned cost as something that they wanted to see more of, and perhaps thought the city did not do enough of effectively, apparently, to get these bond measures over the finish line. All right, we've got 1 second. Okay, we had another bond issue tonight, and this one was out in Rio Grande City, Gruya ISD, and this would be a tax increase, bond issue for maintenance department, for the Starr County Courthouse, for the auditorium. This looks like just unofficial election day results so far, unofficial, but it says that it did not pass. So tax increase out in Rio Grande City, Gruya ISD does not pass, and we haven't gotten any information yet out of the PSJA bond, but it may be just people aren't willing to raise their own taxes, or to kind of get into that situation where they're going to be needing to pay off interest, payments going on down the line.
Well, and a broader thing to provide some context here also. Yes, all elections are local, but we are potentially part of the justification for the way voters are making these decisions could be the broader economic outlook at the federal level. I don't think it's a big secret that the very stubborn high prices that consumers are seeing at the supermarket, at the gas pump, at the basic cost of living issues, that voters, even those who support, irrespective of whichever candidates they supported for president. They were hoping that our leaders would do something about lowering the cost of living.
And cost of living, I mean, that is, I would say, at least issue number one or number two for why Donald Trump was reelected president last year.
Sure.
Cost of living made a real meal out of that strategy, going after cost of living. You see in New York City, not to wander too far away from the Valley here, you see in New York City, the mayoral candidate, Zohran Mamdani, affordability, really hammered the message of affordability, and it looks like he is going to, in fact, I'm being told that he won, that he is now the new mayor of New York City. But yeah, those costs, affordability, this is something that in 2022 people were not just starting to say, but coming out of the pandemic, we're in 2022. This is a big issue in 2024. Now in 2025, we still see cost of goods, cost of living being a real driver in how people are voting.
And so it makes it even twice as hard to talk to people about asking for more revenue, more borrowing, increasing taxes. If the overall economic outlook that many people are seeing, what's it going to be like in 6 months?
Right.
Some analysts have suggested there are indicators there suggesting there's some cracks in the wall of the economy, if you want to use an analogy or a metaphor like that. So with unpredictability, people are less inclined to say, well, the thing that I can control, if I have some say over it, in my property taxes, I don't know what these other expenses are going to be doing in the next 6 months. So maybe now's not the time for me to invest additional monies via increased property taxes in the school system. Now, of course, I would argue that it's always a good time to invest in the school system because it pays dividends in the long run for the community, for the state, for the population writ large. But there's real cost issues that not just people in Texas, but people around the country are facing, and they are looking for relief. And if this is the one way they can get it, by turning down the request for an issue of bonds that's going to increase their tax burden, well then, that's got to be at least part of the reason why some people are going against these bond measures.
Right. All right. Well, I want to thank you, Robert. We are going to take another quick break right here, and we are going to finish it up. Remember, we will go all the way until 9:30. I want to thank you for joining us on your election headquarters here at Valley Central Plus. We'll be right back with more election news. Election headquarters. Thank you for joining us here at Valley Central Plus and on valleycentral.com. Said it before and I'll say it again. There's no action like democracy in action. And to give us an update on democracy in action over in Edinburg, we have our Jorge Vela. He is watching the Edinburg mayoral race, and he's going to be coming up with there he is. There he pops up right there. Speak of Jorge, and he comes in. And Jorge is watching the Edinburg mayoral race, one of the big races we have here tonight in election night. Jorge, how you doing? What are you hearing out there?
Yeah, Brian, we're still waiting for any results from Hidalgo County Elections Department. There's still nothing to report on. Here at the Richard Molina headquarters, everybody's still waiting. They're just being patient. We saw Mr. Molina arrive about 30 minutes ago. He talked to some supporters. There were some applause, but they're still waiting for any results to come out. We also texted with the Omar Ochoa campaign. They say they're still waiting the same thing. They said they still saw some long lines about 45 minutes ago at the UTRGV polling site. We also texted with the Johnny Garcia campaign and Jonathan Salinas, who say they're still also waiting for any results as they're at the respective parties. Now here the people are just waiting patiently as they wait to see if there's any election results coming in. Now this is a four-way contest between three familiar faces and a newcomer. Richard Molina was the former mayor of Edinburg from 2017 to 2021. He lost the re-election bid to Ramiro Garza, the current mayor, who then did announce he was not going to seek re-election because of cancer diagnosis. And then we got Johnny Garcia, who was a city commissioner from 2020 to 2023. And then we got Omar Ochoa, who was the city attorney of the city for about 5 years. And then we got the newcomer Jonathan Salinas, who's a community activist working on a working class platform, and that's the way he's trying to get votes. Now, all these candidates say that we're voting or running on economic development plans, all in their respective ways, and now we just wait for the results. We're still waiting here with the campaign, and as soon as we hear anything from any campaign or any results, we'll get you updated.
Jorge, let me, before you go, let me ask you real quick. You are out there on the ground, and we have not heard any numbers. We've not seen any numbers. The same for you. Have you heard any reason or any suggestion about why there's been this delay in reporting?
We haven't spoken to the Hidalgo County Elections Department as to why no numbers have been released, but Omar Ochoa's campaign and Richard Molina's campaign did say that that is because they wait until the final vote is casted in the county. Now, the lines were pretty big. We were there at the Annex Building election poll site, and the line was pretty much stretching. It was about close to 100 people, if not 100 plus, and they also said that at the UTRGV polling site, there was maybe up to 200 people. So maybe that could be the situation. We haven't heard anything from the elections department, but we're still waiting for any first unofficial results from early voting and see if there's anything going on there.
All right, sounds good, Jorge. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Great job. And yes, one of our guests here, Alex Martinez from the UTRGV College Democrats, and showed me a picture earlier of this line at the UTRGV polling site. Really long, 200 people still waiting in line. That has got to be maybe not a record, but that is a big turnout, especially for what apparently we are now calling an off year election. Alex, does that surprise you that there are so many people out there at UTRGV?
Yeah, we were very surprised, and the students that actually reported the line were surprised as well, because not a lot of people go out and vote for propositions, but we're glad that everyone is getting a say in this.
All right, and we're also joined again by Alexis Uscanga. He is with the RGV College Republicans. And what have you heard on campus, Alexis, about the kind of engagement or kind of excitement for people to come out? Like, I think we've all talked about there's not too many people who show off year elections, mainly constitutional amendments, unless, you're in, say, Edinburgh or something that's choosing a mayor. So what have you been hearing leading up to the election about sort of the excitement about it?
I've only heard more of the excitement on the Edinburgh mayoral race, right? Especially from students, because it impacts UTRGV directly. I know that, UTRGV is apart from Edinburgh technically, but just the city life, the kind of life that students want, I think that's what they're voting for in this election. And I really want to see the results, because it's going to be very telling on how the future of Edinburgh will be for the next 4 years.
Right, as you can see on your screen right there, we still in Edinburgh, we have 0% recording in Edinburgh mayoral race. We don't have any recording for people in either of the city commission race. And I just got handed a note from Aliana, our digital anchor, and she says that Hidalgo County Richard Cortez says no numbers for Hidalgo right now because people are still waiting in line. And so that talk about a turnout. It is now after 9 o'clock. Polls closed 2 hours ago. Although I will say, and this is the rule in Texas. If polls close at 7 o'clock and you are in line at 7 o'clock, you have the right to vote. As they will stay open, apparently like they are in Hidalgo County, they will stay open as long as people are in line by the time 7 o'clock rolls around and polls are closed. So it looks like it may be a long night and perhaps an even longer campaign for the Edinburgh mayor. I think we mentioned this earlier. I don't think I'm going out on a limb here when I say that this was probably going to go to a runoff for candidates. Really, really hard to get that 50% +1. But what does it say to either of you that we have such high turnout and such engagement, at least in Hidalgo County? And it may be driven by the mayoral race in particular, but that is still, a reason that people have come out.
I think it speaks a lot about the excitement that students have, especially those who barely turned 18 and those who are in their 20s. They want to see change in their communities, and ultimately, a lot of there is approximately more than 20,000 students in the Edinburgh campus, majority of them who call Edinburgh home. So whatever happens in Edinburgh, whoever runs the policies in Edinburgh is going to have a direct impact in their lives. And I'm so excited that students and young people are wanting to take positions in local races, because local races impact us more directly than the state or federal races tend to do. So I very excited that a lot of students, a lot of young people are taking an interest in this.
Yeah, I agree as well with Alexis. I know that a lot of people, especially college-age students, have been very vocal about what they want Edinburgh to be in the future, because it is probably the fastest growing city here in the Valley. There's been a lot of business being done over there, and obviously there is a lot of college students, so they call Edinburgh a home. So I do believe that they're very, they really want to choose their next leader for the next 4 years.
Now, earlier during one of our earlier broadcasts here, we were kind of teasing this show, talking about coming up, and Alianis, one of the digital anchors, had asked me, why did I want to have people from UTRGV on? Why did I want to have college students on? And the demographic shift is, we're about to hit a big demographic shift. There's been analysis that by 2028, by the next presidential election, Gen Z and millennials will make a majority of the electorate. Come 2030, 2035, could be over 65% of the electorate. Can both of you just kind of talk to me about expand a little bit on not just this election, but what you're both seeing as far as young people and their engagement in politics going forward?
I think a lot of young people are just want to see improvements in their lives. As we go into the real world with jobs and everything like that, we want to see improvements in our economy. We want to see improvements in our streets and our daily life. And that's why a lot of young people, like Generation Z, is taking to the polls, because that's the most direct impact that we can have towards our country, is voting. And it speaks right now in the Edinburgh mayoral race, and it speaks everywhere across the country that Gen Z is stepping up.
Yeah, I agree with Alexis as well. As y'all know, there's been an affordability crisis these past few years, and not a lot of college-age students can either find a job or purchase a home or whatnot. So that's why a lot of people our age, college-age students, have been very vocal about politics. They see what's going on. They see that they do need improvements. So that's why they've been voting and being more active in voting.
Now we have been really focused on local elections, statewide elections here, but I want to take you out of the state, far away right now to California, because we are watching. We haven't gotten an update yet. Because their polls, they're 2 hours behind us, so they're not really, we don't really have numbers from them yet. But in California, the only measure on ballots out there is Proposition 50, and that is as the government is asking the voters to give them permission to sidestep their redistricting commission and have legislators redistrict this year, mid-decade, for the midterms. And hopefully, they say, to pick up 5 seats in response to the Texas redistricting fight that happened here over the summer. And I kind of wanted to get into this a little bit, because the redistricting fight, as I said to State Representative Aaron Gomez, was the discussion of the legislative session this year, and it is having national ripples out from Austin all the way to California, North Carolina, other states now looking to see if they can change their maps in response to what Texas has done. I just wanted to get your opinion about the redistricting and about the response to the redistricting.
Yeah, so as y'all know, here in Texas, there was a mid-decade redistricting. Usually this is done every 10 years after the census. And this response by California Democrats, I believe, is the right response because there was no reason other than following orders from the president to change the maps here in Texas. So I feel like California Democrats had to respond by switching from the commission and actually having the legislature fix those maps so that they can kind of counteract and balance out what was done here in Texas.
In 2021, we had a lawsuit that was brought up by the Department of Justice, citing, the voter laws that would entail Texas to change their district maps, and Texas followed through this 2025, summer of 2025, and even though we redistricted, we still have more majority Hispanic districts here in Texas, and in California, it's an independent commission that redraws those maps, and California is sidestepping just because of Texas' response to that lawsuit.
Are they? Yes, they're putting that in front of the voters, but there's also been other states have said, I'll say red states have said, we also want to expand outside of any sort of DOJ lawsuit. And the DOJ lawsuit was cited later on. There's a lot of footage of lawmakers in Austin saying, well, we want our voters, they're trapped in Democratic districts and they can't get out, and these Republicans, and it's basically a elections have consequences issue. We think that we can do this. A performance map is what it was called. So what do you say to other people, other states who are also looking to redraw their maps mid-district to follow in line with Texas?
I think Texas spoke very clear this past 2024 election. We had a significant shift to the Republican side, and I think that's one of the main reasons that redistricting was also done, because it correlates directly with the 2024 presidential election. I went from Trump won it in 2020 by 5 points, and he now won it by 15. So there's a big shift, especially with the Hispanic community. A lot of Hispanic Republicans are now getting representation under these new maps.
Yeah, so a lot of these maps, especially down here in the South and specifically Texas does have the most racially gerrymandered map in the whole country. So I do believe that all these other red states are just following suit and trying to racially gerrymander these seats so that minorities and us Hispanics have a less say in who we can vote for at the federal level.
Well, Alex, if Republicans say this is a performance map and we performed well, is there an argument to be made for that the spoils of war go to the victors, and having been victorious, that they should be able to redraw the maps how they want after that?
Well, like I said before, the maps should be redrawn every 10 years after the census. So I do believe, like I mentioned before, that this is just racial gerrymandering, because there's absolutely no reason to do this. We're 5 years away from 2030, so I don't see why they need to do this, even though they are winning right now. What are they fearing? And that's just my point of view.
Now, this case obviously spawned a lawsuit that is still has been argued in El Paso, is still waiting for some sort of resolution. Now, the deadline to file is 4 days away to file for next year. What kind of problems do you foresee if we get right up to or go past that deadline without that case being resolved?
Yeah, so I do believe that this is just a headache for every single candidate, regardless of it's Republican or Democrat. So right now, every single campaign is running off of just hypothetical maps. And this uncertainty is just throwing out of whack what is the election season and all this campaigning that all these candidates are doing. So I think it is a disservice to every single candidate that we don't know what's going to happen being this close to the filing deadline.
Alexis, do you have any thoughts on what might happen then for next for the midterms if at this point it's the 4th and candidates have to file by the 8th and we are still not sure which maps we're using?
Yeah, I actually agree with Alex. I think it is a headache right now that the maps need to have already been finalized. It already had passed the legislature, already got signed by the governor. So right now, a lot of candidates are running in the 34th district and in the 15th district. So if they could finalize that court order, it would be a good service to those candidates on both sides of the aisle.
You're talking about finalizing the maps that Republicans put together, not necessarily finalizing it as saying we're going to hold off on these maps. You'd like them to finalize it and say these maps are good.
Yes.
Alex, would you like to see them go back to the 2021 maps?
Yes, I do, because like I mentioned before, redistricting should be done every 10 years, and that's the rules we've been following until this exception with the whole redistricting here in Texas.
Yeah, there was that DOJ from the 2021 maps. Do you see an issue with those? Because it can get a little strange. In fact, the courts could decide that the maps created this year are or are not okay, and then turn around and say actually the ones in 2021 also are or are not okay. So there's still a lot of balls up in the air, but there was that DOJ lawsuit about the 2021 maps. Are you comfortable with them still?
So with those maps, I'm absolutely okay with them. I do trust that the census did give enough data in order to redraw the maps. So I don't see why right now in 2025 we have Texas redrawing every single map.
And Alexis, why do you think the Valley was targeted to a couple of these districts down here were targeted for redistricting or being redrawn?
I think it gives a lot of the RGV more emphasis, just like in the 15th district and the 28th district are just inversions of what these current maps who represent us are. So the 34th district took parts of Hidalgo currently, and now the 28th district takes, I think, the western part of Hidalgo. So Cameron County is a standalone with the 34th district alongside Nueces. So I think it's still kind of basically the same. It's just inversions of what we've currently see.
Now, traditionally in midterm elections, after a president is elected, the next election you have after that, the opposition party doesn't always win, but we're going to say most of the time wins, and sometimes wins very big. If next year Democrats make significant inroads again, should Republicans be okay with redrawing the maps if they're performance maps?
I think the maps are set in stone as is for right now, and I don't think in the following sessions we'll see redistricting anytime soon, because it's also a very big battle, and you saw that big battle this summer. So I don't believe that'll happen.
Yeah, I do believe that if Democrats make really big gains this upcoming 2026 election cycle, Republicans and all of these Republican-led states will try their absolute hardest to redraw their maps even further and racially gerrymander them even further than they are currently.
All right. I appreciate the discussion about redistricting in California's Prop 50. Now we are less than 10 minutes out, so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and talk about some of these propositions, some of these bond initiatives. I don't know if you guys had seen that the Brownsville bonds failed, and it didn't seem like it was close. And so again, let's make sure that we recognize very early, still calling 0%. In fact, the Cameron County elections officials telling us that 47 out of 57 polling locations are reporting in Cameron County, and new numbers will be coming in. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that you called it, that there wasn't enough transparency?
I think I called it. I even a lot of people from Brownsville kept saying like there's no transparency in what is happening with these bonds, and also I feel like it was a little too close to the election that they started basically giving out all this information, but it didn't give enough because it also tried to put in the Performing Arts Center into those bonds, and people were very thrown off. So I believe if Brownsville wants to try the next time, Brownsville ISD wants to try the next time, that they should do a forensic audit on why the voters should vote on a $460 million bond, which is a tax increase.
I agree with Alexis as well. People obviously decided, and we don't know the results yet, but more than likely people are against this. Like Alexis explained, there's no transparency, so I see why people voted the way they did.
Now let's go through a couple of the constitutional amendments that we had discussed earlier. Again, 17 on the ballot that everybody in Texas got the chance to vote for. Right here, we are looking at Texas Proposition 1. This is to fund the Texas State Technical College system, and we are over 50. We have 54% in now, and that number seems to be relatively holding somewhere between 69 and 71 around there. And you both were in favor of this one, correct?
Correct.
All right, let's move on to Proposition 4 then. This is the State Water Fund, again, by 54%, and again, a very similar number. And both of you guys had both said that this is something that was important, especially to the region, and you were in favor of this one. So we're going to move on now to Proposition 13, and this is a property tax exemption for the school districts. And this one, I don't know, you can just say overwhelming support, 82 to 18. That's would raise the homestead exemption from $100,000 to $140,000. And we're going to go now to Proposition 17, and this one was the proposition on the border security tax exemption, and that one is 60-40, 53% in. And we had talked a little bit earlier about how this might not be something that is for everyone across the state, even though these are constitutional amendments and everyone in the state gets to vote on them. This might not have generated the kind of excitement that other measures did. So I wanted to thank you here for coming out with this. Can you tell me what which is looking to what's next? Alex, can you tell me what you're going to be doing coming up with the candidates, campaigns, and where you are going to be in 2026?
Yeah, so we'll be working with every single Democratic candidate here in the Valley, more specifically Hidalgo County. So we're going to be doing meet and greets, town halls, debates, and whatnot. So I'm very excited for that.
All right, Alexis, how about you?
I'm also very excited that we have a lot of Republicans running in the RGV. You don't see that a lot, and I think that's very important to highlight because the RGV is growing in voters and also in Republicans. And we're going to be trying to highlight all of those candidates in Hidalgo County and Cameron County and making sure that we get out the vote for them.
All right. And again, want to thank both of you for coming. We're joined by Alex Martinez, the UTRGV College Democrats president, and by Alexis Uscanga, the president of the RGV College Republicans. And of course, we want to thank our UTRGV lecturer in political science, Robert Velez, for stopping by. We want to thank you for stopping by and spending this time with us on a busy election night. We really appreciate you, and we really thank you for tuning in here on Valley Central Plus on valleycentral.com. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next election.